Okay, everyone. So now I'd say that enough people are here that we can dive in. Thank you so much for joining me today. Like it's seriously so exciting for me to see like how many people are here and to be able to share this virtual space together. I know it's not quite the same as in person. There's always something lost, but I continue to be amazed at how much connection and what a beautiful sort of shared field can be created even online. So I hope that we can connect and feel that today. And so I know most of you know me, but for anyone who doesn't, I'm Josh Funfer. And before we dive into the talk, I was just going to say too that I was hoping to see a few faces, and I do, and that's lovely. And I 100% welcome you to take care of yourself and do whatever feels best. Lovely. Okay. So before I dive into the talk, I want to invite us all just to take a few minutes, to take really just a minute to come into the present moment. So I would invite you to either close your eyes or look gently at the floor, to take a deep breath. Really allow your lungs to fill before you release the air. And I invite you to bring your attention down from your head, from thinking about the day or what you've been or whatever's arising, to bring your attention down to the soles of your feet, to feel the solidity of the ground beneath you. I invite you to take one more breath, really feeling it. Whenever you're ready, I invite you to slowly open your eyes again. Come back into the space. Welcome, everyone. This is such an exciting moment, and I'm so happy to get to connect with all of you and share with all of you. So the heart of all of this is I'm giving this talk because I want to share a practice with you. I want to share the practice of seeing yourself and the world around you through eyes of love. And before I speak more about it and dive into it, I just want to say that, this is one practice among many. And there are so many phenomenal psychological and spiritual practices out there. And I believe that most of them can lead to self-growth and fulfillment and a richer experience of life. And I'm really just presenting this as one path, one river. But it's one that I'm deeply passionate about, that I've sort of come through over years of practice, of study, but even more importantly than that, it's a path that I'm really excited to dedicate my life to. And I'm hoping that even just some aspects of it resonate with you. If even one thing is a takeaway, then I am so happy, and this was so worthwhile. And really, this is the most meaningful part of my life, and so that's why I want to share it with you. And so that's really the heart of it. So I'm just going to quickly break down what the talk is going to be, sort of what the structure is, so you have a sense of time and what we're going to be doing. So first, I'm going to give a little bit longer of a personal introduction, let you know who I am and what I'm up to. And then I'm going to speak for about half an hour about the background for Eyes of Love as a practice. I'm going to talk about the experiences, the lessons, and the insights that led me to this practice, and just speak briefly about some of what inspired it. The teachings, the all of that. Then we're going to get a break. So about halfway through, we'll have a 10-minute break just for stretching your legs, resting your eyes from the screen. So that's definitely coming. And then I'm going to, once we come back, describe like what it actually, some of the components of seeing through eyes of love, what it looks like practically. And even more exciting than that, I'm going to show you what it can be like. I'm going to guide us all through a 15-minute meditation where we get to practice, especially looking within through eyes of love. And I want to name that is the main focus of this talk. I believe that seeing through eyes of love applies equally to within and without, but in my experience, it really starts within. So that's going to be the emphasis for today. And then after the meditation, after we've sort of got this, like dipped our toes into the experience of seeing through eyes of love, I'm going to give 3 like practical tools as a takeaway. And these tools are basically just something you can do in your day-to-day life out in the world that can help sort of get in touch with this way of viewing yourself in the world. And then we'll have 30 minutes at the end for questions and discussions about anything from like the theory behind it, how you might apply it. So there's going to be hopefully enough time for that at the end. Okay, so that's sort of how it's going to look. So starting with a little bit about me. So for one thing, I'm a registered clinical counselor of British Columbia, and I opened a counseling practice on Salt Spring Island called Eyes of Love Psychotherapy about 3 months ago. And I'm also really excited to sort of show you all a bit of my office. I've been, it was a big journey to renovate this place and make it a sanctuary to hold this work. And it feels so good to be sort of debuting myself and just a little bit of the space. Hopefully one day soon I'll be hosting in-person events there. And so I got my master's degree in integral counseling psychology, which really looks at the whole person in terms of support and healing, from the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. As Morgan mentioned, we went there together. And I'm really excited to announce that I'm teaching a course in the same program that I graduated from at CIIS called Therapeutic Communication, which basically focuses on the foundational therapeutic communication skills. And the way that I hold the course, which is what I'll be talking a lot about today, is teaching young, like beginning therapists how to support their clients in dropping from the head down into the heart. And I'm going to be diving more in depth about that today. I also have my bachelor's degree in Western philosophy and Eastern religious studies from McGill University. And basically, like philosophy, religion, psychology, all of that is to say that like I am just so excited by the great mystery of life and of the human spirit. It's just it's my passion. And for all of you who know me and like all of our endless talks about that sort of thing, it's kind of my MO. I don't really have a lot of range in that sense. It's my passion. And so basically, in terms of philosophy, like I've always loved the big questions, and watching movies as a child, usually adult movies that my dad would show me and my mom would be a little bit mad that he was showing me. But at the end, I would find myself like asking my really patient father questions like, what does this mean? Do we really like have a purpose in life? Like, and like, are we free to choose how we experience the world, or is it determined for us? Like there's so much suffering in the world. Can we make meaning from this suffering, or is it just all pointless? And that sort of continued and led me to my degree in philosophy, which was really good. It really helped me form a foundation, a sort of theoretical foundation. But about towards the end of my undergraduate degree, I realized that academia in particular wasn't the path for me. But instead, what I realized is that I wanted to help people, support others in asking these questions themselves, to sit one-on-one with people. And, if I could even help share any aspect of how significant it was for me to really get clear on what I value most in life, and on really recognizing how much agency I believe we have in choosing what we believe, what we think, and really witnessing how that changes and shapes the way we experience the world. And that type of existential exploration is a big part of how I hold therapy in my one-on-one sessions. And so that was my undergraduate degree. And then, to speak a little bit about how I came to seeing through eyes of love itself, I need to go back to the gap year between my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree. So I had this incredible trip where I went to India and Nepal for 3.5 months. It was so profound and life-changing. Basically, as I'd been studying Eastern religions, every Buddhist philosopher I read said something that really stuck with me. They said, like, if you read every piece I've ever written and write about it and debate it and like know it backwards and forwards, you will at best understand half of what I'm trying to say. It's so crucial to go live it, experience it. So after hearing this for about 4 years, as I continued to write papers and debate about it and look at it intellectually, I finally was like, okay, it's time. So I asked my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, you offered to take me to Nepal a couple of years ago, and I wasn't that interested. Does that offer still stand?" And so he took me to Nepal, and then my mom, who she spent 6 months in India, and that had been about 30 years ago before we went, and she jumped on that train. I was like, "Josh, do you want to go to India before you go to Nepal?" I'm like, of course. So then I ended up spending a month in India with my mom, a month in Nepal with my dad, and then another month and a half in Nepal by myself, just really sinking in. And so I'm just going to share really two stories that were the most significant, and that really that shaped and were the seed that Eyes of Love started with. So basically, my mom, who's just this amazing researcher and can figure out anything, plan anything, got us into a 7-day silent retreat, like as soon as we landed in India. Landed in New Delhi, took one plane over to Gaya, traveled to Bodh Gaya, which is an incredibly special village. It's the village that has the Bodhi tree that the Buddha sat under when he had his awakening experience. And so we got to do this silent retreat in a Thai Buddhist temple, no more than 2 kilometers away from the tree that the Buddha sat under. And it was incredible. But the other piece is, I hadn't really meditated before. Like, I'd studied this stuff. I knew it backwards and forwards up here, but I just toyed with meditation very briefly. And all of a sudden, I'm all day, every day for 7 days in a row in silent meditation. We weren't even supposed to really make eye contact with the other participants. It was meant to be just a really deep dive into our own direct experience. And turns out I was really bad at it. My mind was just racing. I was thinking about all these memories and going over so much in my head. And I was being, and I really, I know that so many of us struggle with an inner critic, with that voice in our head that's like chastises us for not doing the right thing or not being perfect. And oh man, mine went crazy. I was just sitting there in meditation, like struggling to do it and just like whipping myself, like, come on, you studied this for 4 years. Like, why can't you do this? Like, it should be so easy. What's wrong with you? So that was like my whole first day and the first half of my second day. It was just the most exhausting and intense experience of my life. I mean, it made exams and like the busiest day in customer service seem actually not that bad. But then something like absolutely incredible happened on that second day, where I was just deep in it, deep in this self-deprecation. And then I heard the most like gentle feminine voice in my head say, "Sweet child, it's not about you." And it was like, it just was this insane revelation where I realized, like, I'm in the most remarkable place, surrounded by people from around the world who'd come here for this purpose. Like, I was in the middle of so much beauty, and I was just fixating on myself. I was treating this retreat as like a make it or break it test to determine if I'm worthy of love, if I'm worthy. If I pass, I'm good. If I fail, I'm worthless. But it was always about me. And like finally I let that go, and my eyes actually started opening a little bit. I was looking out, like I could actually take it in and witness, be a part of this. And yeah, it was incredible. It was probably the first time in my life that I actually got out of my own way. And the rest of the retreat was an entirely different experience. Then like insight started flowing. I was journaling. And I'm not going to go like too much into what came, but I will say that it was when my worldview, all of these ideas and beliefs about the world started to like come from the cognitive realm and land in my lived experience. I finally started seeing the world that way. And honestly, that was the first time that I started to see the world and see myself through eyes of love. And so like one really powerful example was I was doing walking meditation out in the garden. And I was looking at the bushes and the trees in this beautiful garden. And it's like I finally realized, and this seems so obvious, but that plants are actually alive. Like I always knew that I knew they grew. I could have like answered correctly on a multiple choice test. Are plants alive? Yes. But I saw them and experienced them more as objects. Like I would speak about whether they're beautiful or not, large or not, how like I didn't see them as beings that I could connect with. But all of a sudden, in slowing down and in getting out of my own way, I could feel them, and I recognize that they're beings we can connect with, we can actually have interactions with. And so like in this kind of moment of awe, I like walked up and touched a leaf on one of the bushes. And that feeling when you like hug a friend that you haven't seen in ages, and it's like a full body hug and just sends this warmth through your body. That's what I felt when I touched the leaf. And that's part of what can happen. And then I'm so grateful that that was my first experience in India, because then after that we left the temple, hopped on a rickshaw, one of those little 3-wheeled cars that are open, and just drove into absolute chaos. Like for those of you who've been to India or seen about it, it's madness. It's there's so much noise and movement. It's like every square inch of the road is used. I came back to North America and I was like, wow, we're just wasting all this road. We could be fitting scooters in there and bicycles. And the one other thing about me is that I want to share is that I'm a highly sensitive person. So I really I can't help but take in stimuli very deeply, and I can't turn that off. I notice a lot of things all the time. So before I had slowed down and started to see through eyes of love, it would have been a nightmare for me. I would have been so overstimulated. But instead, I was just like a kid walking through, Disneyland or some magical world. I was just enamored by this ocean of life, of color and sound. And basically the rest of my trip in India and Nepal was like that. And it's definitely been a journey. Like, I want to own coming back to North America, then when I was back in my familiar territory, some of the old patterns and habits and thoughts, of course, came back. And seeing through eyes of love, it's just like anything, it's a practice. And for me, it's always about returning to it. It's not about, I don't expect myself to be doing this all the time, but it's just if I'm noticing that I'm falling back into my old way of being, that's just a gentle reminder to return. All right, so that's sort of how I came to Eyes of Love, and a little bit about me. And now I'll speak just a little bit about what Eyes of Love is. So basically, it's a philosophy. So seeing through eyes of love is the core of my worldview. It's a practice. It's a psychological and spiritual practice that we can cultivate, each, like, every day or however often we feel called to it. And it's the foundation, it's the motivation, and it really is the guiding light for my counseling practice. So it informs how I hold therapy. And it's the heart of my spiritual practice as well. And so, yeah, basically, seeing through eyes of love, I mentioned this earlier, it begins with looking inwards. And because what I learned through that powerful moment at the silent retreat is that once we're able to view ourselves with a little bit more gentleness, we're able to not be so hard on ourselves. It really gives us, it can be energizing, and it starts to open up the world. It starts to, because when we are treating every experience as a test of our self-worth, that just naturally puts us into survival mode. We are wired genetically to prioritize our survival. But once we can view ourselves more gently, let go of that, some of the self-criticism, the whole world can open up. And then really one of the most important aspects of seeing through eyes of love is being open to all aspects of our experience. So open to the body, to the physical sensations that arise, open to the heart, to our emotional experiences, both the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones, to be open to the mind, to our thoughts, our beliefs, and to be open to the soul, to our creativity, our sort of that awareness that notices all of it, and to that aliveness, that life force that animates us. And so basically, that's the meditation that I do every day. My way of opening to eyes of love is, it's basically, I'll share the actual oath with you, and then this practice was built on it. But it's on right before I left the retreat, when I asked, how can I take this out into the world? Because I knew that it was going to be a bombardment. I asked, I thought to myself and reflected on, how can I take this away. I carry it with me. And so the oath I swore was that I swear to find the courage each and every day to keep this heart open, to practice the mindfulness each and every day to keep this mind open, and to love every single living being that crosses my path, including the one who walks it. And so that's really where all this started. And when I say opening, I also mean really opening to both the joys and the hardships of life. One of the most important lessons I've learned, insights, is, and I truly believe this, that we really just, we have two choices in life. We can either be open, which means open to joy, to connection, and also open to hardship and grief and pain, or we can be closed to both. We can be protected and safe, relatively safe, not as impacted by suffering and loss and hardship. But by doing that, we're also just inherently closing the gates to feeling the depths of joy, of bliss, of intimacy. And so part of choosing to commit to See Through Eyes of Love was committing to opening to both aspects. And it really took me till this retreat, till I was, I think, 23 years old. Because before that, I was shut down. I was really, really very heady. Like, my philosophy was a bit of an escape. I could talk endlessly about the world, about feelings, about the human condition, but I wasn't really feeling any of those. I wasn't open to them. So that opening is sort of where it begins. And then part of that is bringing in a certain amount of compassion. So looking with, like, a lot of spiritual teachers speak about this as open-hearted awareness, and Seeing Through Eyes of Love is very intimately connected to open-hearted awareness. Essentially, the way that I like to think about it is compassionate observation. So it's being in the role of the witness or the observer, really noticing our feelings, our sensations, but without getting swept away by them. And also bringing a kind of a gentle curiosity. Like, there isn't like a strong need to like understand it or pull it apart. And there isn't a need to necessarily change it in that moment, but rather like I think part of what helps me is getting in touch with that sort of, that sense of playful curiosity that we had when we were children. Like, what's that? So, and I find this is really connected, and this was really fostered through my integral counseling psychology program, which is making space for all parts of ourselves, body, heart, mind, and soul. And, even just our different beliefs, like the part of us that maybe wants to be productive and successful and is maybe aligned with the inner critic at times. Like, I have to do this to be okay. But equally making space for the part of us that just wants to binge watch Netflix sometimes and knows that we need a break. And so it's usually when those parts are at odds, if we can bring that compassionate observation to both of them, give them each space and their moment in the spotlight, a solution can often arise naturally. When they both feel heard, when both parts of ourselves feel heard, then it's amazing how much can open up. It's really similar to interpersonal conflict between two people. And that's that part's work is one of the main sort of tools or lenses that I hold in individual therapy. And the other one that I want to speak about is called relational meditation. It's what my mentor Riaz Moten, who's with us today as well, taught me. Hi, Riaz. And this is essentially a way of looking through eyes of love at the self with someone, of bringing in open-hearted awareness, compassionate observation together. And this can be so powerful. It's sharing a field of awareness and essentially doing something quite similar to individual meditation, slowing down, making space for whatever is present, but with the companionship and the support of having someone there to walk with you, to witness with you, and to emotionally help hold you and support you as like we look through this. And that's the main way that I hold seeing through eyes of love in individual therapy. And it's something that we can do with someone we trust, with a friend or a mentor or a family member. And I'll speak a little bit more about what is involved in this, but I just want to open this up, that it's not just in therapy, that the next time that you're having a heart-to-heart with someone in your life, I invite you to maybe bring some of that in and experiment with it. All right, and I know that we've been at this for a while. Thank you all for staying with me. And I'm just going to speak to one final element before we can all go on a 10-minute break and stretch, use the bathroom. I just want to pay homage to the different theories and philosophies that inspired seeing through eyes of love. So, and I'm not going to go into how they inspired it, because that might be a talk down the road. And I welcome any further questions about it in the discussion period, if anybody is curious about any of these. But so, and I believe me, I condensed this list down. It was really long, but essentially the main influences are Buddhist wisdom. So looking at sort of the inherent Buddha nature that we all have, this capacity to be awake and just inherently lovable. So non-dual wisdom. So coming from the Hindu tradition, from the Vedas. So it's especially Advaita Vedanta, which is that the individual soul there's this principle that the individual soul is the same as the universal soul, that the life force that animates all living beings is the life force that animates you. And so I think having an experiential, getting in touch with that was a big inspiration. Christian and Islamic mysticism were huge for me. Everything from a powerful book called The Way of Mastery from the Christian tradition, and incredible poets like Rumi and Hafez from the Islamic tradition, essentially just falling in love with the divine within each and every one of us, with the sacred, or that which is beautiful. And then from a philosophical perspective, existentialism. So that free will, and that we have a choice in each and every moment to determine how we want to experience the world. And also phenomenology, which talks a lot about direct experience, not looking at the world from a distance, not thinking about it, but focusing our attention on the immediacy of our sensations, of our thoughts, even of our emotions. And then from the psychological tradition and the psychotherapeutic tradition, I love its humanism, which is this, and the main thing from that is that every single person, humanism holds that every single person can flourish and thrive if given enough love and support. That is the ingredient we all need, but that we all have the inherent capacity to grow and to, yeah. So that's kind of a summary. And let's all go on a break. It's 1:45, so if we could all be back at 5:55. All right. Thanks, everyone. It's great to see a few cameras popping back on. I'm like, good. We're all still here. Um, yeah, so thanks, Amelia. The emojis are good too, everybody. Okay, so, all right. Brilliant. All right. So now that we're back, I want to take a moment to speak a little bit more about what seeing through eyes of love actually is. So I've touched on it, and in speaking about everything that inspired it, um, yeah, we've already gotten a sense, but now I just sort of want to condense it down and yeah, present it as clearly as I can, and then we're gonna dive into the meditation. So basically, seeing through eyes of love, it begins with presence, or with focusing on our direct experience. And that's not thinking about our experience, but rather focusing our attention on what's the immediacy of what's happening in the present moment, whether it's physical sensations, emotional experiences, or even thoughts. And there's a quote that I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but from two teachers I really respect, Matt Licata and Jeff Foster. They're sort of between therapists and spiritual teachers, which is that the past is dead, the future does not exist yet. The present moment is where life happens. This is where things are alive. And a big part of that is, yeah, dropping from the head down into the heart. That's sort of a great way to summarize that. And then the two main components I'm going to speak about are self-awareness and self-acceptance. And like I say, this can also be awareness and acceptance when looking out at the world through eyes of love. But today's talk is mainly about looking within. So self-awareness, that in terms of looking within through eyes of love, self-awareness begins with slowing down. We often tend to be moving so quickly because that's what the people around us do, because that's what we have to do in lots of situations to be successful at our jobs or even in social situations. But in looking in this particular way, it begins with usually like taking a deep breath, like what I invited us all to do at the beginning. And just really feeling that breath, slowing things down a little bit. And then next is mindfulness. So, and that's choosing to enter the perspective of the witness, being aware of what's happening for us without getting swept away by them. So it's like they're in the foreground of what we're noticing. But if it's an unpleasant thought, it's okay, that's here, and that can be here, or a bit of pain in a certain part of the body. It's noticing it, and also being open to the other sensations and experiences that are arising. And then then comes in what I've spoken about before as gentle curiosity. That one is really important. It's not needing, a big part of that is not needing to change what you're experiencing. It's just kind of like, what is this? I want to know this part. I want to know this experience, but also not needing to fully understand it, not needing to get where it came from, where it's going, why it's happening, but just what it is in the present moment. And then part of this too, and this is a big part, is self-honesty. So I believe that being open to our experiences requires us to be honest, because it can be really tempting to deny some of our experience or to resist it. Like if something's unpleasant or we don't like what's happening, and this resistance by resisting what is, or sort of trying to deny an aspect of our experience, we're essentially conveying that it's not okay, it's not welcome. So, and of course some resistance can still be there, but at least starting to work with the denial, starting to recognize, okay, I may not like this aspect of my experience, but it's here. And maybe I can let it be here just for the next even 5 seconds. So that's how to start to drop it into self-awareness. So slowing down, mindfulness, gentle curiosity, and self-honesty. But then an equally crucial part of seeing through eyes of love, that's sort of the eyes part, the awareness. Self-acceptance is the love part. And I believe that the part of that is self-forgiveness. So in order to be honest with ourselves, I think that self-honesty must be accompanied by self-forgiveness. Because if there's one of the reasons it can be so hard to look at ourselves honestly and acknowledge these unpleasant parts of us or these difficult parts is it's so easy to judge and criticize ourselves for it. That was exactly what had been keeping me from seeing this way. And so, I really want to stress that when cultivating self-honesty, I strongly recommend that you set a strong intention to bring in self-forgiveness as well. That you're going to be honest about what you discover, but then also be forgiving. And one thing that helps me is to essentially treat yourself the way you would a dear friend. Like if they come to you and say, I just made that same mistake I've made 30 times. Like, why do I do this? I hate myself. It's like, we're not likely going to give them a really hard time. To be like, yeah, like, how could you do that? It's more going to be like, we all make mistakes. And like, yes, you're right. Like, I hate to see you hurt. And maybe like, I want the best for you. So yeah, probably this is something to change, but I love you anyway. So applying that spirit to our own experience. And this is essentially working with the inner critic. That's going to come up because the inner critic, that the superego, that voice in our head that's so hard on us, that working with that is crucial. And one simple exercise that can be really powerful, and I invite you to try this the next time you find yourself being hard on yourself, is to speak to that part of you. You might visualize it as a person or a thing. You might recognize if it has a certain voice or a certain color or quality, but at any rate, focusing on your inner critic and then saying, thank you for trying to keep me safe. But now it's time for you to get behind me. Stay in the background. Your time in the foreground is over. And so then next is allowing all of our experiences to be there. And this, I won't go into that because I've been speaking about it a lot, but it's that pleasant or unpleasant, like joy and sorrow. There's room for you. And another way to speak about that is giving space to all the different parts of ourselves. Again, like they can be there exactly as they are. Yeah, so that's the summary of what it's like. And then before I go any deeper into talking about sort of some of its benefits or anything like that, I would like to turn this exploration to a more experiential level. Since direct experience is such a big part of seeing through eyes of love, I want to take the next 15 minutes to experiment with this. And so as we transition into the guided meditation, I really want to encourage you, especially now, to take care of yourself. So for instance, feel free to turn off your camera for the meditation, even if you've had it on before, whatever you're most comfortable with. And everything that I'm about to say is an invitation. So if anything doesn't feel right or it feels uncomfortable, feel free to just tune me out and sit with in whatever way feels good to you. All right. So with that, Again, I invite you, just like at the beginning, to either close your eyes or look gently at the floor, whatever feels more comfortable. And I'll close my eyes. I invite you to begin to deepen your breathing, to allow yourself a little more time for each inhale and each exhale. I invite you to experiment and find a depth of breathing that feels comfortable and natural. Again, I invite you to allow your awareness to drop from your head, from the realm of cognition and understanding all I've been saying, down into your body. I invite you to notice the ground beneath your feet and to notice all the points of contact where your body meets the chair or the couch or the bed you're sitting on. And as you begin to notice your direct experience, to notice what's happening in this present moment, I invite you to adopt an attitude of gentle curiosity, to allow whatever you notice to be there. In this moment, there's nothing to change, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to understand. Now I invite you to bring your awareness to your head, to notice the crown of your head, to notice your mind. And I invite you to notice all of the spaciousness within your mind. There's room for whatever thoughts or beliefs or memories arise. There's all the space you need and more. And now and throughout the meditation, I invite you to allow your thoughts to be there, and to notice how they come and go. And I invite you, if you find yourself following a thought train deep into a memory, I invite you to notice that and to gently step off the train, to bring your awareness back to your immediate experience. You also might notice how a thought sits with you, how it feels, zooming out from the content of the thought. With your next breath, I invite you to bring your attention down to your face, to all of the muscles and bones in your face, to notice your eyes, and to notice any sensations that arise. I invite you to notice your neck, your shoulders, your arms and your hands. I invite you to notice your chest, your whole torso, to notice any sensations that are arising within your torso and your upper body. You might notice parts that feel heavy or light. You might notice temperature. You might notice the feeling of your clothes on your body. And I invite you to also notice the spaciousness within your body, that there's space enough for all sensations, for all experiences. I invite you to tune into your core, to feel the center of your body, and to notice what's there. All experiences are welcome. If you notice no sensation, that's just as welcome. Notice what that's like, what it is to be aware of that. I invite you to notice all the spaciousness within your core that can hold any sensation, any instinct, and that grounds you. Gently shifting down, I invite you to notice your legs and your feet. Notice where your body makes contact with the ground. With your next breath, I invite you to zoom out, to allow your awareness to notice your whole body at the same time, from the crown of your head down to the soles of your feet. To notice all the spaciousness throughout your body. To allow any sensations to arise. And if you feel called, I invite you to now put your hand on your heart and to bring your attention to the heart space and to notice all of the spaciousness in your heart. There's enough room to hold any and all emotions that arise. There's space in the heart for all emotions. Everything is welcome. I invite you to feel into the quality of love that allowance has. To notice how it feels to let whatever is here be here. Notice what it's like for any experience to be welcome and to be seen. And with your next breath, feel free, take your hand down from your heart, still staying in touch with that space. I invite you to notice you're noticing, to become aware of the space itself, to notice that part of you that's allowed you to be aware of all the sensations within you. I invite you to continue breathing deeply as we begin to transition out of the meditation. I invite you in your own time to direct your gaze to the ground. Slowly open your eyes and let the light in. And as you become aware of the environment around you, I invite you to stay in touch with the experience of seeing through eyes of love, I invite you to take a few moments to look around your environment, to notice the colors, the textures, to allow yourself just a few moments to look around you, the same quality with which you've been looking within. Whenever you're ready, I invite you to bring your attention back to me, come back into contact. Thank you, everyone, for joining me in that. So that was an experiential exploration of how it can feel. And this is, I just want to say a few quick things about some of the benefits. You may have felt some of them now. And I just want to say, and I've hinted at them in speaking about what it's been like for me. But I've found that seeing through eyes of love, seeing in this way, one of the benefits is living with an open heart, being open to our own experiences, to others' experiences. And that part of that involves being fully present, dropping from that place of analyzing to the place of really experiencing. And that could be anything from experiencing the flavor of a delicious cup of tea or coffee or food to, really smelling the ocean when you're hanging out on the beach. And part of that too is noticing the beauty, the magic, and the wonder of the world around us. I find that, when I open my eyes and slow down in this way, things just seem a lot more colorful. They're a lot more three-dimensional. And I think part of this too is really being able to see the innocence at the core of other people. As we practice being more gentle with ourselves, I find it can be a lot easier to extend that outward, to recognize that, people are scared too, and people probably aren't accepting themselves as much. And yeah, but the main thing that's just so precious, and that's so at the core of this, is being gentler with ourselves, for starting and opening the way to forgive the mistakes we've made, to start to accept some of our perceived shortcomings, and to really see the beauty in our imperfection. Because when everything's welcome, it all can show up and shine. And then there's also the aspect of living honestly. But as we do this, as we practice this self-forgiveness, it can be a lot easier to speak your truth and to live your truth. I know it's been for me. And so those are just a few of some of what I found from practicing this. And now I'm just going to speak a little bit about 3 practices that you can take with you. I didn't want to just explore this theoretically, and I didn't want to just offer some of this experience with me. I ideally wanted you all to have something you can take out into the world with you. So one practice and this one, I love this one because it's something that you can do, or at least that I found that I can do, like if I'm, out at a restaurant with a bunch of people, or, at work. It's kind of, it's very short. And so basically, in order to slow down and start to open this up, the practice is to close your eyes and to take one full deep breath. So that means a full inhale with your eyes closed, a full exhale with your eyes closed, and then slowly opening your eyes again. And I invite you all to try it. And that, it can be a reset. Like I find that if I'm getting stressed or I'm getting caught up in something, that can just sort of be a way to reconnect with yourself. And part of the magic I find is keeping your eyes closed all the way through the exhale as well. When I rush it, like eyes closed, inhale, and then open them on the exhale, it's not quite as powerful. It's just giving yourself the full breath. And then the next one, and this is just sort of taking a snippet of what we did together and what I've spoken a lot about, is that when you find that you're resisting a feeling, name that feeling and let it be there for just 5 seconds. So, say if if you just got like disappointing news, or or someone said something upsetting and you're upset or angry, it might be like, it's so tempting to go into the narrative of, I don't want to be angry. My day was going so well, damn it. But just being like, okay, like I'm angry right now. Like, can I be angry for just 5 seconds before I, go do whatever I need to do to, yeah. And I mean that, even just that simple sentence, like, I'm feeling angry right now. That's a way of saying to your anger, like, I see you. I know you're here. And then the third one is this one maybe takes a bit more time. It's not quite as easy to do in social interactions, but it's to shift your awareness, to open your senses to receiving stimuli rather than seeking them. So with vision, this can be particularly powerful. So say if you're sitting on a beach or in the woods or in the city, and you're kind of like looking for something, it's switching to that kind of receptive perspective. One way to ease into this is to focus on your peripheral vision, to kind of look softly. You might practice looking at your screen this way now, kind of noticing what's around you, but still looking straight ahead. So it's like you're looking past the screen. And I find it's sort of like, in order to see the rise of love, we have to really open our eyes. And when we're expecting to see something, or we're looking for something, we're closed off to everything else that's there. And also, this can just be a great way to enjoy a natural environment. Like if you find yourself in a, national or provincial park, and you're just wanting to take it in, this is a good one to get the most out of the experience. Yeah. And so I just basically, how I want to close before shifting into questions and discussion is that if this practice resonates with you, if any part of it has touched you, I really encourage you to practice it in your daily life. To whether doing when one is alone, that can often be the most accessible. So in meditating, journaling, whenever you have just a relatively quiet moment. But like I say, it could also be even in social interaction, when when other people in the group are talking. And I also want to reiterate that you can practice this with a trusted friend, or with a member of either your family of origin or your chosen family, with sort of just practicing slowing down together. And in either asking for support or giving support, it can be so powerful to say can we let this be here? And also, I also just want to name that this is really the heart of how I hold psychotherapy. And so if if you know anyone who's looking for this kind of support, or if you're looking for it, I am accepting new clients as well. And that's sort of just a deeper dive every week. But the thing I love about this is it's something that we can all do in our day-to-day life. Oh, man, thank you all so much. It has just been it's just touched my heart so much to get to connect with all of you and share this with all of you. And that concludes the talk. And I want to invite us to explore together. So for the question period, oh, and you're right. I also just want to name too that I might have mentioned this in my email, but I'm so grateful for all of your time. And if you do need to go, you feel free to leave. Like I'd love it if you stayed for the discussion, but that's the conclusion of the talk. And so, yeah, in terms of questions, anything's open. Like if you have a theoretical question about it, a practical question, a personal question, like anything that feels alive is welcome. And in terms of the format, if you want to either raise your hand or just unmute your mic, I can now see all of you on my screen. So yeah, Josh.
This is less of a question and more of just a comment. And I just want to just, I think that what you're doing is extremely important and extremely valuable. I think one aspect, it's on one level, it's very simple, and on another level, it's very foundational. And so I speak to you as a carpenter is that if you build a really immaculate house on a very poor foundation, or you don't have the right bedrock, or you're building on dirt that settles over time, but the foundation doesn't have the integrity. It doesn't matter how complex and how intricate the woodworking you do on the fine details. Over time, it is going to settle, and there's going to be cracks in your drywall. Your joints are going to come apart, and all of the fine, complex, intricate stuff that you do on top of the foundation, which the foundation sometimes is not very sexy, but everything that you do, all the sexy stuff you do on top is going to over time erode and degrade on the basis of the fact that your foundation doesn't have the integrity it should have. So this grounding in direct experience, I think, is I think you're on to something. I think what you're doing is very much the core of what all of us, especially me, because I know me, but everybody should be looking at and getting that foundation right.
Thank you so much, Josh. That's such a powerful metaphor. I think that goes so far, and it's so relatable. Thank you for sharing that. That's such a good takeaway. Yeah. So,
I have a quick question. I was just wondering. So, is everyone able to hear me properly? I think it's okay. Yeah. All right, sounds good. So you mentioned, and thanks for having the talk and having everyone in for the talk. But my question basically is, you mentioned your program is about trying to reconnect with yourself and open up your inner feelings so that you have, a better awareness and you can work towards a better life, right? It's basically the gist of it, I think. But over here, the only way to do that is to actually confront your fears head on, right? So there'll be times when you have to step out of your comfort zone, have accountability for yourself, and get to it, actually do it. Make sure you're accountable for what you're doing each time. And it's good to have space and things like that, but at the same time, there has to be accountability. So how is your program going to have that part of it where you actually confront your fears to
And
make sure
Vivek,
we can feel our feelings. Yeah, that's
just so I fully understand, Vivek, are you speaking mainly about accountability to ourselves or accountability to others?
so it's accountability to ourselves. When we are accountable to ourselves, we automatically become accountable towards others. So
Perfect.
that is true. But the thing is, like, a lot of people are not willing to face their fears, to like step out
Yeah,
of the comfort zone, to like go ahead and do something.
for
What
sure.
would your message be towards them?
Yes, thank you. That's such a wonderful question. I'm really glad you brought that in, because that is true. This is scary. I mean, even like the reason why I so stress the seeing through eyes of love piece, the self-forgiveness and the allowance, is that I think that's essential to be able to do this, because it's hard. It's scary. I mean, as you say, like, this is so many people spend their entire life avoiding a lot of fears. That's part of why it's so intense to look within. And so I would say part of that accountability is the self-honesty I spoke about. And I also want to be transparent. I believe there are situations that this cannot be done alone, that we need support, because whether it's trauma that's arising or just a fear from, it could be like a fear from a very young place, some early trauma of being abandoned when we were a child or not cared for, that, say, like a partner leaving us, triggers. And if we want to dive deep and bring awareness to this, open-hearted awareness to that fullness of that experience, we need someone there to hold us emotionally and to remind us that we're okay and that we're supported. I would say that's part of it. Does that speak to your question?
Yeah, it does. But I also understand it's ultimately up to us to actually, how do you say, work on it and reach to that spot. Even it doesn't matter even if someone's holding your hand all the way through. It's ultimately up to you to have the courage within you to transform that fear to love and then go ahead what needs to be done. And this is the last question. It has nothing to do with the program, maybe, but it's more
Sure.
about your experiences. So you mentioned when you were in India that you had like this kind of an awakening and there was like a divine feminine voice that spoke to you.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on that voice? Like, what did you see any kind of colors? Like, did it have some kind of a reddish, orangish hue, or did you feel anything around that time when you had that experience?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Megan also asked me in the chat about that. Yeah. So I'm, yeah. Well, actually, I'm happy to answer. And before I do, I just want to quickly address the last thing you said too about the how it's ultimately up to us. I just want to thank you for saying that. That is so true, and that is really the cornerstone of therapy, the way I hold it. I'm so glad you brought that in. It's like that's what I say on my website, and when I meet new clients, is that like I am fully here to support you. I am all in, but it's ultimately the motivation to do the work and to look within. It starts with you. There's nothing I can ever do for someone or anyone. Yeah. So I wanted to really give credit to that. And yeah, I'm hesitating because I wasn't sure that I was going to speak about that voice in this talk, because it's
You
something.
don't have to say everything. Like, you can only say what you feel comfortable talking about. It's not a requirement you have to like tell the whole thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I welcome it, honestly. And there's a part of me that feels ready to speak about it. So that voice, it had a very powerful energy. What I noticed was a kind of a green light, the connected to the heart chakra. And it was very much connected to the earth. My experience of that voice was sweet Mother Earth. And it was fascinating because I went to Bodh Gaya. I was expecting to maybe be meeting Tara or some Buddhist deity, but instead the connection felt very grounded in the earth and the land. And that was just the really embodied experience I had of that.
Nice. And this is just like a small suggestion, but it's totally up to you to follow when you have time. I
Yeah.
would definitely suggest you practice more earthing.
More what
And
again?
earthing, it's basically walking on barefoot on the grass, but best
Mhm.
done if it's after rain or something like that, where you can actually pick up the water, energy from the water as well. So it's an additional boost.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with me and with all of us, Vivek. That's so nourishing on so many levels.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. I'm curious too if anything else is coming up.
Hey Josh, it's Alison.
Hi, Allison.
I can think we're mostly silhouetted, but that's okay. I have a question. So again, related to the voice a little bit, but more the message. That message was very powerful, and it was, if I remember, you said, "Sweet child, this is not about you."
Yeah.
How do you reconcile and balance that message with the inward looking that you have, all the inward looking you have to do for seeing through the eyes of love? It seemed to me to be a little bit of a juxtaposition of, how can I say it? I'm not saying it very well, but you understand my question, right? They seem to be opposite. One is it's not about you, and the other is, well, actually we've got to really look at ourselves and so on. So how do you want to just maybe speak to that a little?
Oh, I would be happy to speak to that. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Allison. That, because absolutely, I fully recognize it. That in terms of language, and it needs clarification, because in terms of language, they're definitely contradict one another. But in my experience, they don't, because what I really got, and I'm just going to clarify a little bit about the context, about what I understood the meaning of "it's not about you" in that moment, is it's not about, so when I was thinking about me, it was more from like an analyzing perspective, like who am I? It was more abstract. What is Josh worthwhile? What do I need to do to prove myself in this world? And it was very egocentric. So a really good friend of mine once said that, we tend to think that, self-centeredness is often like thinking highly of ourselves, like someone who's arrogant and full of themselves, always looking in the mirror. But in reality, most self-centeredness is negative. It's the easiest to fixate on ourselves when we can't stand ourselves. And so, I mean, it's not what I got, the practice that I carried away from that is to not see everything in relation to me. So like when I meet a new person, do they like me or not? What do I need to do to impress them? But rather, who is this person I'm meeting? When I go to a place, not how should I be in this space? How should what do I need to do to fit in? But more of what's happening here. And that helped me letting go of that, that kind of putting my personality at the center. Is it actually, it can help to drop into the direct experience, even within ourselves, ironically. Like if we're noticing a sensation that's happening within you, if it's not a statement on whether you're worthy or not, then you can more be with the actual experience. Does that help clarify, Allison?
Sorry, we're on mute. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. No, that's great. I do understand. Thank you.
Oh, good. You're so welcome. I'm so glad you brought that in, because I 100% see it. And that was a great question, because it sort of deepened everything.
Josh?
Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah. It was interesting when the other Josh talked about foundation, and when your foundation has been badly formed, specifically, I will say by two parents who, one addicted to alcohol, one addicted to God, and
Yeah.
you do not fulfill their expectations, and you are brought up to believe that you should. And at some point I had to completely cut myself off from my mother. carrying that guilt and disappointing people
Yes.
is a terrible thing. And self-forgiveness has been the struggle of my life. You know, my father wanted me to move back to Hamilton and live with him. So when I look at what these two people wanted from me, at some point I can look at them and say, that was their drama. But they wove me into it so deeply, you know, that I still carry so much of it. And I feel guilty about leaving my mother for the last years of her life. But survival was what I had to do. And justifying that, I can justify it intellectually, but I can't justify it in my heart. You know, I didn't have anything more to give. And I did give to my father, but I couldn't move and give over my life to being a caretaker for him.
Of course, that's too much. I think, thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca, for sharing your experience. And it goes back to I really being with it. Like I hear that there is guilt and hurt, and it's the kind of thing that really comes forward to be seen, to be held. And I don't believe there's ever a specific answer or a universal answer, but
feeling like being able to let go of that guilt, I mean, it's still there, you know. Survival was what I needed to do.
yes,
Because the conditioning, and so many of us grow up with such profoundly horrendous conditioning or modeling, you know, that we model.
absolutely. Yes, and I'm so glad that you brought that in, Rebecca. That's so important, because it's true. This isn't modeled. You know, self forgiveness, making space for our experiences. We're not taught that. I mean, maybe a few of us are. I was lucky enough to be exposed to this fairly young, but I also was exposed to culture and to environments where we're in a way we're taught the opposite, by experience. It's not always, our parents telling us, it's them not forgiving themselves and perhaps not forgiving us.
That's a good point. Yeah. And when I look at the addictions of both of them, you know, I understand that they needed that to live. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's an ongoing thing to forgive oneself, but they probably couldn't forgive themselves too.
Exactly. I think that is part of it. And in terms of your experience, speaking about this conditioning, I think self-forgiveness isn't necessarily natural or easy. I'm so glad you named that, Rebecca. It's something to ease into and to work with support. And honestly, it can start with noticing. Like, it doesn't have to be like, I'm okay with what I did, or I completely forgive myself. It can just be, I feel a lot of guilt about that. And maybe that can be okay. Maybe that can be here. That guilt can be here just for now.
I'm getting old, Josh.
Right. Yes, there's a timeline.
Yeah, I'm on the downward slope here, babe.
Fair enough. And that can sometimes too be a motivation to look at this. And I think too, part of this is, you mentioned sort of letting it go. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think was one crucial insight that just like blew my mind when I heard it, is we have to first hold it before we can let it go. And that could be holding space for it. Doesn't have to be loving it or like just saying it's great, but holding space for it, letting it speak its piece.
It's endless peace. Well, there's a difference between carrying something and holding space for it too.
There really is. I'm so glad you said that. And I saw your hand, Riaz, as well. If you wanted to ask a question or weigh in on this as well. Thank you, Rebecca, and I'm happy to explore this more.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. It's great to be here. As I'm listening to the comments, like just some thoughts are percolating, and I'm making a comment, but I also want to kind of turn it over to you to see if there's more you could say about it.
For sure.
Because one of the things that seems to me in all the instructions or the practices that you're describing about mindfulness and open-hearted awareness and being with things as they are without trying to change them, you know, and building off of what Josh was saying earlier in his great metaphor about a foundation. It seems like, you know, what you're describing is the foundation of this is unconditional awareness, unconditional open awareness. And I just want to be more explicit about that if I have that right, because
please, of course, I will.
I think that we're doing this practice of self-forgiveness, or we're doing this practice of compassion, or all these things that are the qualities you're talking about, but it's actually not the mind that's doing it. You know, it seems like the foundation is awareness, which has an unconditional quality to it, built into it. That's what it is. And so by tapping into that, that's where the power of this approach really comes from, because we can't be unconditional. The mind can't be unconditional. The ego can't be unconditional. It's sort of the nature of it is to separate and evaluate and strategize. And that's all has its place. But it seems to me like you're inviting us to a foundation of something that has these qualities built into it that come from opening to unconditional awareness or presence or openness. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that comment.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Riaz. I think that's exactly it. And that goes back to the last thing that you said, Rebecca, about like, there's such a difference between holding something and carrying something with you. When I say holding something, I'm speaking to, this unconditional awareness. And that speaks a little bit to one of the ways that I understand love, especially when I say seeing through eyes of love, which is that not needing someone or something to be any different than as it is. That's the unconditional piece. So eyes of love, they're really inseparable, the awareness and the acceptance. Yeah.
Well, because in a way it feels to me like you're just pointing us back to something that's a resource that's always here that we forget is here. You know, that, you know, like, oh, I'm going to see through the eyes of love. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to be with this in a way that doesn't try to change it. That's a tall order. Like, I hate this thing. I don't want it to stay here. I want it to go away. And yet, like, in some ways, what you're saying is that there's something that's already here, already holding it, already aware, that actually doesn't need it to change. And you're kind of inviting us back into that layer or level or foundation of our experience. That's kind of how I hear what you're saying.
Thank you so much for bringing that piece in, Riaz. That is sort of the final piece that speaks to, I implicitly was inviting us into that without explicitly naming it when I invited us to notice the awareness itself that we were at the end of the meditation. It's sort of, can we tap into this space, or can we create with someone else in relational meditation, in seeing and committing to seeing this way together? Can we access this, that's already there, that's bigger than us? Like when we were looking at, you know, how the mind and the heart and the body have enough space to hold whatever arises. It's not the mind, the heart, and the body of the ego or of this personality. There's something deeper that we can tap into. That, as you say, Riaz, it's always there. And this is an invitation to tap into it.
Just a quick thing. Sorry, I'm interrupting too much, but this is just related to Rebecca. I was wondering, Rebecca, do you keep in touch with your parents sometimes, like,
They
or
both
have you like,
passed on. They both passed on.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, my mother I cut off contact with, but my father I did go back and sit with him and had some beautiful, like, he was very, very ill in a hospital, and we were able to hold each other. And I didn't have to listen to him tell me that I had to come back to his church. He just said, my darling daughter. So we did have some closure. We did.
Well,
Yeah.
I totally understand what you meant when you said carrying the guilt and like basically like holding on to it. Like, so what I would say is this is not like, this is something you feel like you want to do, you can do it. Like I would say every night before you go to bed, just like remember your parents and tell them like, I've done the best I can and I've done whatever you guys have told me. And I'm really happy that you've been there for me. And thank you for everything. So when you keep reiterating that every day, every night, and you try to connect with them, it feels like they're still around you and they're listening to you. That way you're subconsciously tuning into yourself and slowly letting go and forgiving yourself little by little. That will help you let go. But at the same time, you'll still carry the guilt, and has like all our actions do have consequences. And it's fine that you're carrying the guilt because that will balance you out completely. Because without fear, there is no love. And without love, there is no fear. So just if this is possible and if you can do it, like just for a while at least, so that it lightens the load, that would be like great. But that's just like my own thing. I just want to like put it in. Sorry, yeah, thanks.
Well, I think, your culture, for instance, honors the parents. And I think I think the North American culture has not been inclusive enough. You're not surrounded by family in the same way. And I think that's very sad. I work very hard to make sure that my daughter stays close to my in-laws, and yeah, I agree. Every night say, I love you, mom, and I love you, dad. Yeah. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's just been a long, hard journey.
It is, and so much I hear that, Rebecca, and so much of what I'm speaking about too is when we can't get closure. Like there's a whole arena of helpful guides for how to relate to others interpersonally, but this is really how to be with our own experiences when there isn't necessarily an external fix or a way to alleviate it from the outside.
No magic pill, eh, Josh?
Sorry.
No silver bullet.
Alas, there is not. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Josh. I love you.
Love you too. And so we've got about 5 more minutes. So if there was any final questions or explorations, I want to make space for them.
Hi, Josh. I think that there was a question somebody mentioned in the chat.
Oh, right. Thank you, Adam. All right. From Maya, what do you tell clients who aren't able to sit with their dark feelings? Ooh, great question. Deep question. And I really appreciate it. This is not something to be rushed into. This is not something that I ever will force or even strongly encourage my clients to do. Like there is honoring where someone is essential. That like respecting their autonomy, respecting what they want and are able to do. It's always, just like in the meditation, an invitation. So, if a client of mine has dark feelings that they're bringing up, but, not wanting to sit with, I will meet them where they are. It's sometimes it can take weeks, months to build the trust between us, and also to sort of essentially making little baby steps of getting closer and closer to those feelings. And it often does begin in the analytic place. Like when I say dropping from the head to the heart, that's often because the head is relatively safer. It's more familiar. So that can be a great place to start. And if I might say, okay, like, can we talk a little bit about those feelings? And that's bringing the trauma informed lens in, never diving right in, but rather always honoring their autonomy and gradually, with continual consent and checking in, leaving space and opening an invitation to continue to go deeper. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. And Sarah, I was wondering if I saw you unmute your mic.
I was just going to bring attention to Maya's question in the chat.
You were both on the same page, you and Adam. Thank you. Chantal.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Josh, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your breadth and depth of how you shared your living through the eyes of love philosophy.
Thank you.
And the practical tips, which I'll definitely use. And the one that stands out to me in this moment, that it sounds simple, but living a life of wanting to be in deep mindfulness and relationship with all that is. Like I love the simple breath. I can be in the middle, for some reason, I don't really go shopping very much anymore, but you know, where all the stimulation and activity and people, I can just take that breath and close my eyes and come out again. So I will do it this Sunday at the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh, that's great.
At a reggae concert. So I'll bring you with me.
Thank you, Chantal. And thank you for sharing that too. That's such a beautiful example of how you can use this anywhere in the midst of so much stimulation.
Yeah, very powerful. Thank you.
And Amelia.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to comment on the question in the chat and your response. And I'm just wanting to show some appreciation and gratitude to what to me sounds like, you know, softness, you know, and compassion coming from a therapist or a person, and not forcefully intruding or, you know, requesting a client to go somewhere at any particular time or space, and just really honoring their experience in the process. I experienced that as very like gentle and like with a lot of care and sweetness. And so I'm just wanting to share that with you today, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. That's, yeah. And I'm so, thank you for really highlighting that. And yeah, thank you to Maya for asking that question, because yeah, that, you know, it's that sort of being client-centered or being so respectful of where someone's coming from is the core of this. And I'm so glad it came into the room. I feel like it really needed to be. I'm glad it came in the discussion. Yeah. So everybody, we are at 7 o'clock. So I want to, we're at time, and I just want to thank you so much for coming and for bringing yourselves and sharing this with me. This is, and I'm gonna stay on for the next few minutes in case anyone wants to stay, but I welcome you all to get back to your evenings. I thank you for taking these 2 hours out on a Friday to be with me here.